Yeah, so I've been watching this HBO show, The Last of Us, and it's blown my mind. It's incredibly satisfying. It's an incredibly intense experience. Also, I was never somebody who really played the games. However, the idea of like a sci-fi dystopia where the world falls apart and there's survivors, and you could die at any moment, that kind of thing. That's we're on like decade two of basically every version of that. We've seen a lot of versions of this kind of idea, and so what is The Last of Us bringing to this that's different? Which makes it so intense, which makes it hit so hard. I think the first thing is the macro versus the micro. In these dystopias, one of the great things you can do with the dystopia is zoom out to the 10,000 foot level and see the world, see how things have evolved, see how things are devastating. But you also have stuff like hordes and armies, and the dehumanization of what's happening on the ground. What this show does so well is, yes, you do see the skylines and the city lines that have been destroyed, but most of the time is spent with these two characters, Joel and Ellie. So most of the story is told from their point of view. And it's a very intimate experience. You get a really specific sense of the consequences, that all of a sudden, instead of seeing armies battle or hordes of the undead do whatever they're going to do, you see what it really is, the simplicity of it, which is the value of an individual's life. And this show, more than most shows I've seen in recent times, really hammers home the idea that every life is precious, every life, there's a consequence when it's lost. There's a devastation there. There's a mourning period there. Just very much the experience of characters' wants and needs and how they're going about their life in this sort of level of uncertainty and level of heightened danger at all times. And I think it's really telling that Joel, the grizzled veteran, the grizzled, experienced this versus Ellie's sort of like babe in the woods, new to all this, which is really our in, because obviously we don't live in this dystopia that Joel has lived in for 20 years. But my point is, by bringing it so close to the characters, so intimately close to Joel and Ellie, we have context. We understand what their needs are. We understand what their wants are. We understand the ever-evolving sort of chaos that's around them, which I think really helps to evolve them as characters. Because since we're spending so much time on very few characters, you sort of run the risk of what larger shows and movies, the casts, don't have to deal with, which is, at what point do you get bored of these characters? I think the trick with this show is because Joel and Ellie are constantly evolving, because they're having to adapt to an ever-evolving environment that they're in, we see them grow and change over time. We see Joel go from this incredibly jaded, incredibly beaten down, sort of bitter person into a little bit more of a sensitive person, and Ellie, this optimistic, enthusiastic, but incredibly naive person, sort of get a little bit more sensitive to the jeopardy that she lives in a day-to-day basis. Even in moments where the context for us is unclear, we're sort of seeing it through Ellie's eyes, which is to say, if Joel does something, us and Ellie at the same time typically notice Joel's reaction, and we understand the cue that if Joel becomes serious, then things have become serious, even though we don't recognize what they are, which I think is really good. It puts us in the moment with the characters. It puts us in the world with what's going on. It also helps that the stakes are really clear. So it's not just the stakes of dying or getting infected. It's the stakes of, not just on a macro scale, if Ellie gets killed, the world has lost hope. It's also the idea that if Ellie gets killed, Joel no longer has a partner. If Joel gets killed, Ellie is basically on her own. And so that's really what we're up against. There's an intimacy, there's a reliance there. So I just think it's a really interesting type of storytelling, because I think it's more common with like a drama, especially a period drama, than any sort of sci-fi dystopia we've seen in a while, because it's not focusing on the spectacle so much as it is focusing on the intimate character details between the Joel and the Ellie character and additional characters on the road. So yeah, it's really intense, it's really specific, it's hard to look away, it's sort of a pit of the stomach kind of experience, but that's by design. And I think a lot of that came from the game itself, because you were sort of solving puzzles and relying on the duo of this team. But in the show itself, you're also doing the same thing, because the second Joel gets in jeopardy, Ellie's life is in danger, and vice versa. It's this reliance, but it's also this idea of coming around any corner, something could happen that could completely ruin everything. And the fun of this kind of storytelling is getting out of those jams and having moments of rest and having moments of success amongst the chaos and the devastation that is the world that they have to live in. So a very satisfying show. I'm obviously hooked, and I'm going to see it through the end. But so yeah, so that's it. I just thought I'd tip the hat. Like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you next time.